My cousin's wife spent 20 minutes at my grandmother's 80th birthday party, telling everyone I was between jobs and probably struggling, not knowing that I was the one who had quietly paid for the entire party, the venue, the catering, the cake, and the flight that brought my grandmother from Phoenix to Portland. Then she started bragging about her new position at my company. That's where things got interesting. The drive from Seattle to Portland takes about 3 hours on a good day. I did it in 2:45 because I left before the traffic hit, and I was already running late in the sense that I hadn't slept more than 4 hours. The acquisition had closed at 11 the night before. 11 at night, after 7 months of due diligence, restructuring negotiations, and at least 4 moments where I genuinely thought the whole thing was going to fall apart. My attorney had popped a bottle of Perrier because neither of us drink, and we'd sat in my office on the 14th floor looking out at the water and feeling something that wasn't quite celebration but was adjacent to it. Relief, maybe? The particular quiet of a very large thing finally being finished. I should have gone home. My actual home, the condo I keep in Capitol Hill that has a real bed and blackout curtains and a kitchen I stocked with groceries 2 weeks ago that are definitely expired by now. I should have ordered Thai food, watched something's mindless, and slept until Saturday afternoon. But it was my grandmother's 80th birthday, and my grandmother is the only person in my family who has ever looked at me like I was worth looking at. So I drove to Portland. I didn't change out of what I was wearing, which was the problem, or at least the thing that started the problem. I had a blazer in the car, a navy one I keep for exactly this kind of situation, but when I pulled into the parking lot of the event space I had rented for the party, I realized I'd left it draped over my office chair when I bolted out the door at 6 that morning. What I had was dark jeans, a plain white crew neck that had a small ink mark near the hem from a pen I'd absent-mindedly clicked during a call, and a pair of clean white sneakers. My hair was up in a bun that had started professional and deteriorated across the drive into something more approximate. I had under-eye circles that my concealer had given up fighting somewhere around Olympia. I looked like someone who had driven 3 hours and slept 4. Which I was. I grabbed the card off the passenger seat, the one with the birthday message I'd written at a red light outside Centralia, which I now realize was both illegal and a little illegible, and went inside. The venue was nice. I had specifically picked it because my grandmother once mentioned that she liked spaces with high ceilings and natural light, and this one had both. Long tables with white linens, flowers my aunt had arranged because she wanted something to contribute, and she's genuinely good at it. A dessert table with the bakery cake I'd ordered from my grandmother's favorite place in Phoenix and had shipped overnight. About 40 people, family, old neighbors, the woman who taught my grandmother to quilt in 1987 and still sends her a Christmas card. It was a good party. I was proud of it, which is maybe why what happened next stung the way it did. My grandmother saw me first. She was standing near the windows with my aunt, and when she spotted me across the room, her whole face did the thing it does. Went warm and bright and specific in the way that means she actually sees you, and not just a version of you she's decided to see. She held out both hands as I crossed the room and squeezed my fingers when I reached her. "You look exhausted, baby," she said, and it wasn't an insult the way she said it. It was an observation, and underneath it was the question she didn't ask out loud, which was, "What did you sacrifice to be here tonight?" "I'm fine," I told her. "Happy birthday. You look 80 and absolutely unacceptable." She laughed and swatted my arm. My aunt hugged me and asked about the drive, and for about 10 minutes everything was fine. Then my cousins arrived with his wife. I'll be honest, I don't know my cousin well. We grew up on opposite coasts, saw each other at holidays, the occasional summer when our parents would coordinate visits. That mostly meant the adults talked and the kids watched movies in the basement. He's a few years older than me. We're not close, but we're not unfriendly. He's one of those people who occupies the middle distance of your life. His wife, though. His wife I had met exactly twice before tonight. The first time was at their wedding 3 years ago, where I had stayed for the ceremony, given a card with a generous check, and left before dinner because I had a product launch the next morning. The second time was a Christmas 2 years ago, when I was home for 48 hours and we all had dinner at my aunt's house. And she had spent the meal explaining the neighborhood she lived in to everyone at the table, in a way that was really just a long list of house prices. Her name is Giselle, and she is one of those people who determines your value within the first 4 seconds of looking at you and then spends the rest of the interaction confirming what she's already decided. She looked at me the way people look at a stain they're trying to identify. "Oh," she said when my cousin brought her over to say hello. She scanned me from the sneakies up, taking her time. "I didn't know you were coming. I wasn't sure I could make it," I said. "Work's been busy." "Work," she repeated in a tone that put very gentle, very polite quotation marks around the word. "What is it you do again? I feel like I should remember." "Marketing," I said, which is technically the simplest answer and also the one I've been giving my family for years because anything more accurate requires a longer conversation than I usually want to have. "Right," she said, "freelance, right? Something like that." She nodded slowly, the way people nod when they've already moved on internally. "Well, it's good that you were able to make time. It can be hard to travel when things are uncertain. Financially, I mean." It was said so smoothly I almost didn't catch it. Almost. "I manage," I said. My cousin, who has the social awareness of a friendly golden retriever, was already scanning the room for the bar. "I'm gonna grab a drink. You want anything, babe?" "Sparkling water," she said, and then she turned back to me with the particular energy someone who has just found their project for the evening. She asked me where I lived. I told her Seattle. She asked if I owned or rented. I said owned, which visibly recalibrated something for her, but only for a second, because she immediately recovered and asked how much I was paying in mortgage, which is not a question a person with good manners asks anyone, ever. I gave her a number that made her nod in a way that said she found it acceptable but not impressive. She told me about her house. She told me about the neighborhood, the school district, the renovation they'd done on the kitchen, the fact that property values in her area had gone up 17%. She told me about her car. She told me about a trip they were planning to Italy in the fall, business class. She made sure I registered the business class part, and then my grandmother came over to pull me toward the dessert table because she wanted to introduce me to the quilt teacher from 1987, and I excused myself with genuine relief. For a while, things were fine. I ate good food and talked to people I hadn't seen in years, and watched my grandmother laugh at a story my aunt was telling and felt the specific satisfaction of having arranged something that was making the person you love happy. That's not nothing. That's actually a lot. I was standing near the far end of the room with a glass of sparkling water when Giselle found me again. She had a small cluster of people with her, a few relatives I knew vaguely, a couple who were friends of the family. She had the particular momentum of someone who has had exactly the right amount of wine to perform being charming. "There she is," she said, like she'd been looking for me, which I doubt. "I was just talking about you." I kept my expression neutral. Should I be concerned? Light laughter from the group. Giselle smiled. "We were talking about careers, actually. I was saying how lucky some people are to have that kind of freedom, working from home, setting your own hours. Very lifestyle-oriented." The way she said lifestyle-oriented made it sound like a diagnosis. "It suits me," I said. "I'm sure it does. Not everyone is cut out for a corporate environment. The pressure, the accountability. It takes a certain type." I actually just started a really exciting new role. Took me a while to find the right fit, but I think I finally landed somewhere incredible. "Congratulations," I said. "Meridian Creative," she announced, glancing around the small group to make sure everyone was catching this. "They handle brand strategy for some of the biggest names in tech. It's a very selective culture. The hiring process was honestly more rigorous than anything I've ever done." Something went still inside me. "Meridian Creative," I said, keeping my voice even. "You've probably heard of them," she said, with the confidence of someone who is sure I haven't. "They're really at the top right now. Incredibly exclusive client list." I'm in brand partnerships managing major accounts. She smiled at me with something that wasn't warmth. Honestly, if things ever get too uncertain for you on the freelance side, you should look into companies like this. Real infrastructure, real stability. The thing about Meridian Creative is that I acquired it 8 months ago. Not as a client, not as a partner, the whole company. My holding group had been watching it for almost 2 years, and when the founder decided he wanted to exit and the timing aligned, we closed the deal in October. I restructured the senior leadership in November, brought in a new COO, rebranded the internal culture framework, and have been letting the operational team run it more or less autonomously since January because I trust the people I put in place. My name is not on the website. My name is not in the press release. My holding group, which is called Title Meridian LLC, is listed in the regulatory filing that virtually no one reads. If you work at Meridian Creative, you know you were acquired. You were told the name of the acquiring entity. Whether you looked it up is a different question. Giselle clearly had not looked it up. Meridian's doing well, I said. Really solid Q1. She blinked. How would you know that? I follow the industry, I said. What's your title? Brand Partnerships Manager, she said, with a straightening of the spine that meant she'd practiced saying it. When did you start? 2 weeks ago, she said, but I'm already building relationships with the senior team. The CEO is incredibly impressive. I actually spoke with her briefly at the onboarding session. She came and did a welcome address and took some questions. Very sharp. Very no-nonsense. She glanced at me. She's actually someone you might look up to. Self-made, built everything from scratch. She sounds great, I said. The culture there is unlike anything I've experienced. They don't tolerate mediocrity. You have to actually perform. I think that's why the team is so strong. She looked at me with something that was almost pity. It's a different world from freelancing. No offense. Untaken. I'm actually meeting with the head of creative partnerships next week, she continued. I put together a deck on my own time that I think could shift the entire direction of one of their major accounts. If it lands the way I think it will, I could be on a real accelerated track. I don't think I'll be in this role long. Around us, people were listening. My cousin had drifted back over with his drink, standing at the edge of the group. My aunt had caught the tail end of something and was half attending. My grandmother was across the room and thankfully absorbed in conversation. Which account? I asked. She smiled the way people smile when they're being gracious about explaining something to someone they consider less than. I can't really say. Confidential, but it's one of their largest tech clients. Huge course, I said. Do you know the account lead's name? She paused, a flicker of something across her face. I haven't connected with them directly yet. But I will. Right, I said. And then, because I couldn't entirely help it, it's just that I'm pretty familiar with Meridian's account structure, and their largest tech partnership is with Arlo Systems. The account lead is someone named Petra Nakamura, who I happen to know personally, and I know Petra hasn't had any new partnership managers brought into the Arlo account in the last quarter because I was copied on the staffing memo. Silence. Not complete silence. The party was still happening around us. But in our small cluster, the kind of quiet that has texture. Giselle stared at me. Why would you be on a staffing memo? Because it came from the COO, I said. Who reports to me? She laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. That's not possible. You're a freelancer, R. I own Meridian Creative, I said simply. My holding group acquired it in October. You were in the onboarding session, you said. You heard the welcome address. The entity name that was given to the team was Title Meridian. If you look at my driver's license, my middle name is Title. That's not a coincidence. She opened her mouth, closed it. My cousin set down his drink. Ness, he said, and his voice had changed. He was using my nickname, the one the family uses, and it came out uncertain and younger sounding than probably intended. Are you serious? I've been doing this for about 9 years, I said. Meridian is one of 4 companies in the portfolio. The newest one, actually. I kept my voice level. I wasn't performing anything. I was just talking. I didn't bring it up because there's never a good moment to bring it up. It always sounds like bragging, and I hate that. But Giselle, you have been telling me all night, very gently and very persistently, that I am less than you. And I think you should know that's not accurate. Giselle's face was doing several things at once. Shock, recalculation, something that was trying to be indignation but didn't have enough oxygen to survive. You set me up, she said finally. I didn't set you up, I said. I let you talk. There's a difference. You should have said something, she said. And now, her voice had an edge to it, not directed at herself but at me, which is a particular kind of impressive. The minute you knew where I worked, you should have said something. That's manipulative. My aunt, who had been quiet this whole time, made a sound that was almost a laugh and then covered it with a cough. You asked me if I was freelance, I said. I told you something like that. I wasn't lying. I work for myself. I've always worked for myself. You deliberately let me embarrass myself. Giselle. My cousin said her name quietly. She did, she snapped at him. She stood there and let me say all of that, knowing the whole time. I didn't know you'd make it a whole night's project, I said, and I was proud of how even I sounded, because underneath it I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep deprivation. Look, I don't care about the status stuff. I don't care if you have a nicer house or a better title or business class flights to Italy. I actually don't. But you spent this entire evening making sure I knew you found me lacking, and you did it in front of people, and you did it at my grandmother's birthday party that I organized and paid for, so I'm not going to pretend I didn't hear it. Something shifted in the room. I watched it happen. The way the people around us quietly reevaluated the last hour. The way my cousin looked at his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read, but that wasn't comfortable. The way my aunt was very specifically looking at the floor. You paid for this? Giselle said. Her voice was smaller. The venue, the catering, the cake, the flights for my grandma and her quilting teacher from Phoenix, I said. Yes. She said nothing. I set down my glass on the nearest table. I wasn't angry. That surprised me, actually, because I had expected to feel something angrier. What I felt was more like the aftermath of a long day, the kind where you've done what needed to be done and now you just want quiet. I'm going to go spend time with my grandmother, I said. It's her birthday. I found my grandmother near the windows where I'd first seen her. She was sitting down now, the good shoes she'd worn finally earning a break, and when I dropped into the chair beside her, she looked at me with those sharp, particular eyes. What happened over there? She asked. Nothing bad, I told her. How are your feet? She looked at me for another moment. She has always been able to read me the way very few people can, the way that doesn't require me to explain myself. You know, she said, your grandfather used to wear the same watch for 30 years. The one his father gave him. Scratched up, the band was held together with a replacement pin. People used to ask him why he didn't get a new one. She folded her hands in her lap. He said it was because the watch knew what time it was, whether anyone looked at it or not. I didn't say anything for a moment. That's a very wise thing to tell me right now, I said. She patted my knee. I've been saying wise things for 80 years. Some of them are bound to land. The party went on. The cake was good. My grandmother blew out the candles on the second try and laughed about the first one and made everyone sing the whole song even though she's normally impatient with sentimentality. I sat beside her for most of the rest of the evening, and we talked about nothing important. A book she was reading, a bird that had started coming to her feeder, whether Seattle was worth living in given the rain which she considers a personal affront. Giselle and my cousin left earlier than most people. She didn't say goodbye to me specifically. My cousin stopped on his way out, put his hand briefly on my shoulder, and said only, I'll call you. I nodded. I didn't know what that call would look like or whether it would help anything. Some things crack and mend, and some things just stay cracked. We were never close enough for the distance between us to be called a falling out. Maybe it would just be a recalibration. I could live with that. When the last guests were gone and the venue staff were quietly beginning to clear the tables, I helped my grandmother into her coat. She's in good health, but she gets cold faster than she used to. Which is one of those small things I have cataloged without letting myself think too hard about what it represents. Are you driving back tonight? She asked. First thing tomorrow, I said. I got a room down the street. Good. She buttoned the top button, deliberate and careful. I don't like you driving exhausted. I know. She looked up at me. Do you ever rest? It wasn't a reproach. It was a real question, the kind she asks sometimes that has enough weight to stay with you. I'm working on it, I said. She made a small sound that might have been skepticism and might have been love, and then she took my arm as we walked toward the door. Outside, the Portland night was cool and smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. The street was quiet. The lights of the venue spilled yellow across the sidewalk. Thank you for tonight, she said. All of it. It was easy, I said, which wasn't exactly true, but it was true in the way that mattered. She squeezed my arm once, the way she does, specific pressure, specific warmth, the way she has always said the things she doesn't need to say out loud. I waited until her car turned the corner, and then I stood there for another moment in the not-quite rain, letting the quiet settle. My phone buzzed. An email from my COO at Meridian. Subject: Monday onboarding review. Flagging something. I opened it. The first line was, we had a new brand partnerships hire claim at an internal happy hour that she's on a fast track to VP. Wanted you to be aware before the week starts. I stood on the sidewalk outside my grandmother's birthday party and typed back. I'm aware. We'll talk Monday. Handle it by the book. I put the phone in my pocket. The drive back to the hotel was 4 minutes. I valeted the car. The room had blackout curtains and a bed that was not mine but would do. I set an alarm for 7, which gave me just over 6 hours, which was more than I'd had in a while. I lay in the dark and thought about my grandmother's story about the watch, about knowing what time it is whether anyone looks at you or not. I've spent 9 years building something that most people in my life don't know exists. There are days that feels like a choice and days it feels like something I fell into and just kept going. I don't drive a flashy car. I don't talk about revenue at family dinners. I wear sneakers to birthday parties and I wear skirt to birthday parties and I look like I'm probably struggling, and I have learned slowly that this is not actually a problem unless you let other people make it one. Tonight, someone tried to make it one, and I didn't let her. That's enough. That's always been enough. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep before I had the chance to start worrying about tomorrow.